Good morning. I'm sorry we have a little bit off schedule, but not bad. And let me apologize right now if I lose my voice. Of course, you know, debate time, I come down with a cold. Okay, welcome to the great debate. Let me set the scene for you. I'm going to take you back in time. The year is 1775. The month is May. We have gathered on Boston Common. We have heard recently that there was fighting in Lexington and Concord. We're not quite sure what that's all about. We have British troops firing on colonists and colonists firing on British troops. How can that be? We're living in an age before cell phones. It's hard to get communication back and forth. So we thought we would come here. We heard some people were going to be debating what has been going on. And we've decided to come and listen and get the facts firsthand. Now, your job today is to listen very carefully because at the end of the performance, you're going to be asked to vote. Parents too. Now, you're not going to vote for the Patriots because we know they won. We are very happy that they did. We're a free and independent country, and that's what we want. And we're not going to vote for the loyalists over here because, wow, look at these cool costumes. I mean, they look great, okay? And you happen to know somebody over here or over there. That's not why we're voting. We're going to forget what we know about history. We're really going to think back in 1775. And at the end of the performance, you will cast your vote to decide who made the best points. Should we fight for independence? Or should we stay loyal to our king and country? Now, I know that fifth graders have a whole lot of background information on this because they've already studied this year. Fourth grade, this gives you a little preview on what you're going to get to do next year. Okay? So, as you listen to those points, you need to decide, should I stay loyal to my king and country because at this time in history, you are British citizens. We are not a United States yet. If somebody said the United States of America to you, you wouldn't know what they were talking about. All right? You're all British subjects. And you love your king. Well, most of you do. Those guys over there, they don't. And they call themselves patriots, but what would you call them?
Rebels!
Okay, so already we have a difference of opinion. Now, the whole point of this is for you to understand that there are always two sides to a story. And it's your job to listen to both sides so you can make an informed decision. Whether that's in a debate like this, or when you get to be old enough to vote in an election, but even out on the playground. Take the time to listen to somebody else's point of view. There's always two sides. We as teachers hear the two sides all the time. Well, he said this and she said that, and okay? So it's important to take time to listen. Now, enough from me. I'm going to turn it over to my moderator. You will be given directions on how to vote at the end of the performance, so don't even worry about that now. Just listen carefully now. I think you're going to enjoy this. They did a fabulous job yesterday. This is the third time they performed. I never know what to expect. It's different every time we do it. So I'll turn it over to my moderator for the day, Naomi Quimbo.
Also known as Dr. Joseph Warren. Welcome to the Great Debate. I am Dr. Joseph Warren and I will be the moderator for today's debate. Before we begin, there are some simple rules I must ask you to follow. 1. All questions must be directed to me, the moderator. 2. If you call out, you will be given a warning. 3. Further outbursts will not be tolerated, and if you call out again, you will be escorted to jail by my bailiff. And if you are in jail, then you can't vote. 4. Please hold any questions or applause until the end of the debate. 5. At the end of the performance, you will be asked to vote for the side that made the most convincing argument to either remain loyal or fight for independence, so you must listen carefully in order to make an informed decision. 6. Rules for voting will be explained at the end of the performance. Thank you. At this time, Emma would like to introduce our cast of characters. Our camera operator is Brody Freitas. Our interviewer and loyalist Patriot supporter is Cam Giordano. My bailiff for today's debate is Cam Chicka.
Also known as Arnold Paul.
Now I will introduce our debaters. For the Patriots, I have Gabby Culleton,
Also known as Abigail Adams.
Jasmine Lundergan,
Also known as John Hancock.
Maddie Holt,
Also known as Douglas Simpson.
Jake DeFranzo,
Also known as Sam Adams.
and Austin Abbott.
Also known as John Adams.
On the loyalist side is Ava Ruppel,
Also known as Mary Dow.
Haley Bonomo,
Also known as Hannah Caldwell.
Teresa Bumpastori,
Also known as Flor McDonald.
Megan Standifer,
Also known as Captain Hull.
Jordan Martell,
Also known as William Franklin.
and Isabel Schickler.
Also known as Governor
Let the debate begin.
Wait, Mr. Moderator. Please excuse my late arrival. The roads from Virginia are wet and muddy from the spring rains and hard to travel on.
Apology accepted. Aiden Hines.
Also known as Patrick Henry.
Let the debate begin. My bailiff will flip a coin to see who goes first. Loyalists?
Heads.
Patriots, it will be tails. Heads. Loyalists will go first. Our first topic of debate is salutary neglect and the proclamation of 1763. Loyalists? Mary Dowd.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good citizens, the salutary neglect of help movement was a gift to the colonies. For many years, the King George has not enforced navigation acts, allowing the colonies to trade freely with other countries, and has not made them pay taxes as they should as good British subjects. We should have known this would not last forever. When England stopped salutary neglect, that is when tension began. England is now in debt for war fought right here in the colonies. British soldiers were sent here to protect the colonies from attacks by the French and Indians. We like to protect someone who was free. Now it's time to pay our fair share.
Here!
Patriots? Abigail Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Salutary neglect, helpful neglect, was a good thing for we colonists. On this point, Mary Dowd and I agree. But how fair were these navigation acts to begin with? Why must we trade with only England? We enjoyed making our own trade agreements with other countries. This certainly helped our economy here in the colonies. And is it fair to ask us to pay for a war that did not just benefit us, but also England? We colonists fought side by side with the British regulars and helped win that war. Here!
Mary Dowd, would you like to rebut?
Yes, Mr. Moderator. The proclamation of 1763 was a good thing. Not moving west of the Appalachian Mountains is good for all of us because the king is making sure we are safe from Indian attack. We can't send enough troops here to guarantee our safety if we keep moving west, and forcing those Indians from their land will only cause more conflict.
Here!
Abigail Adams, would you like to rebut?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. The proclamation of 1763 has changed everything. After helping England fight the French and Indian War, King George says we can't move west of the Appalachian Mountains. This was one of the reasons we fought. We aren't allowed to move freely. There is rich soil for farming across those mountains in the Ohio Valley. It is not fair to restrict us this way. Give us back salutary neglect and let us move freely in our own country. Here!
Our next topic of debate is the Boston Massacre. Patriots? John Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
The events of March 5th, 1770, known as the Boston Massacre, were tragic. 5 people lost their lives, the most precious gift of all. British soldiers shot into a crowd of innocent colonists without being ordered to by their commanding officer. This all began because of one of those soldiers hit unarmed with the butt of a musket. An innocent boy! Here!
Loyalists? Hannah Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Massacre indeed. A massacre's definition is to kill many, slaughter in large numbers. In the Boston tragedy, it does not do to call it a massacre. 5 died. It is a tragedy, even 1 death. However, the death of 5 is not a massacre. And fellow citizens, be you rebels or loyalists, pay not attention to the engraving of Mr. Revere that appeared in the newspaper. It was pure propaganda, meant to mislead you into opposition of our dear king. He has positioned the combatants incorrectly in his engraving. Let me inform you of the true course of events. First, let me remind you that none of this would have happened if the rebels hadn't started to harass Private White. This was as he stood guard. This was clearly an act of self-defense. Paul Revere's engraving shows the officer in charge leading his soldiers in attack, when in fact he was commanding them to stop firing. Patriots, loyalists, lend an ear all, for the rebels' own John Adams defended these British soldiers when they went to trial, and they were found not guilty. And why would Adams, a patriot, defend these men? Why, I'll tell you why, because he knew they were in the right. We need to obey the laws and not let mob violence rule. Here!
would you like to rebut?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. It was a massacre! 5 lives lost. Even 1 life is too many. If those soldiers felt threatened, they could have fired a warning shot instead of firing into a crowd of unarmed people!
Here, here!
Hannah Caldwell, would you like to rebut?
Yes, Mr. Moderator. Well-aimed snowballs could cause serious injury, especially when filled with sharp oyster shells and pieces of ice. That is what the soldiers were bombarded with. The moon was in such a position on the night of the tragedy that the colonists were on the dark side of the street. How did the soldiers know that the clubs being raised at them were not, in fact, guns?
Here, here!
John Hancock.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Snowballs and sticks don't kill. Guns do!
Here, here!
Hannah Caldwell.
Yes. We simply must not let mob violence rule our streets. These soldiers were clearly defending themselves in attack. Also keep in mind, John Adams, a patriot himself, defended these soldiers and they were found innocent!
Here, here!
Long live the king.
Warning 1. Our next topic of debate is taxes. Loyalists, Flora MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Taxes are truly fair and necessary. Our dear king and our parliament sent troops here to the colonies to assist and protect us during the French and Indian War. Without their support, we would not have been victorious. War is expensive, and England is now in debt for war fought here. We must pay our fair share. Citizens in England were taxing for us and are now paying 5 times more tax dollars than we are. They even have to pay a tax on glass for their windows. The amount we are asked to pay is a small price for what we receive. And what do you rebels do? Make effigies and hang them from trees even after a kind king repealed all but the tax on tea.
Here, here!
Warning 1. Patriots, Deborah Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. When the French and Indian War ended, the king began taxing the colonies unfairly. He has taxed our sugar, our paper, and our tea. These taxes are intolerable because we have no say in how the tax money is spent. I say, no taxation without representation. Who's with me?
Here, here!
Flora MacDonald, would you like to rebut?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. How will representation work? It is too far to travel back and forth to England for representation. The king has always been good to us in the past, and he will continue to be if we remain loyal and pay our fair share.
Here, here!
Deborah Sampson, would you like to rebut?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. There is a difference between taxing the colonies and taxing people in England. Representation, they have it. We don't. We even sent Ben Franklin, your father, over to England to make a polite and peaceful request for representation, and he was refused.
Here, here!
Our next topic of debate is the Boston Tea Party. Patriots, Patrick Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Taxing our tea is not fair. As a result of this unfair tax, patriotic citizens, in protest, did dump tea into Boston River. But let's look at the facts. The men did not damage anything but the tea. They broke the locks on the tea chests, replaced them the next day, even swept the deck when they were some of the ship's crew up with the tea dumping.
Here, here!
Warning 1. Loyalists, Captain Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. On December 16, 1773, colonists dressed as Native Americans boarded my ship, the Dartmouth, and dumped 342 chests of tea into the Boston Harbor. These rebels are cowards. If they won't even show their faces, they must be ashamed of their actions.
Here, here!
Patrick Henry, would you like to rebut?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We know British tea costs less, but we'd rather pay more for smuggled tea than pay the dreaded tea tax. We stick by our principles. No taxation without representation! Here, here! Rally Mohawks, bring out your axes! Tell King George we'll pay no taxes!
Rally Mohawks, put down your axes! Tell King George we'll pay those taxes!
Warning 1, all of you. I will not tolerate any further outbursts.
Thank you.
Captain Hall, would you like to rebut?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. You're paying more for smuggled tea when you could pay less for good British tea, even with the added tax. The law was broken when private property was destroyed. Some of those rebels even tried to steal some of the tea.
Here, here!
Patrick Henry, would you like to rebut?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Parliament and the King have closed Boston Harbor and taken away our right to govern ourselves. This is a harsh act and intolerable. Say goodbye to liberty. I don't know course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death!
I'll give you death!
We're all a bunch of rebels.
Warning, they will take him to jail. Captain Hall, would you like to rebut?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. All of Boston now suffers through the action of a few. The closing of the harbor is a hardship for many of us. But don't blame the king. Let's lay the blame where it belongs, at the feet of those rebels who broke the law.
Here, here!
Our next topic of debate is the Quartering Act. Loyalists, William Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. British soldiers have come here all the way from England to protect us. They bring no shelter. They have their guns and uniforms, but not a roof over their heads. The least we can do is give them a warm bed to sleep in and a good meal. I mean, really, they're here to protect us. It is the least we can do. Soldiers need to be fed to fight well and a place to sleep so they may get their much-needed rest.
Here, here!
Patriots, Sam Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We suffered with the burden of unfair taxes. We lost our right to govern ourselves. They closed Boston Harbor, causing economic hardships, and now they tell us to quarter the soldiers? How fair is this? We struggle to feed our own families. How will we be able to support soldiers too?
Here, here!
William Franklin,
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I repeat, they're here for our protection!
Here, here!
Sam Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We didn't ask for their protection, we could protect ourselves.
Here, here!
Our final topic of debate is the Battle of Lexington and Concord. Patriots, John Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Recently, British troops marched down our villages at Lexington and Concord. How can we support a government that fired on their own people? Even though we don't know who fired first, I know what happened at the Boston Massacre. Now down somebody back got nervous and fired. They tax us, take away our right to govern ourselves, and now they're shooting at us. In Concord, we fired at the British troops when we saw smoke rising from the village. We thought the town was being burned down.
Here, here!
Loyalists, Governor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. No one knows who fired the first shot on Lexington Green, but the militia should not have assembled there. It was a clear message to our troops that they wanted to fight. The soldiers were there sent with two traitors, John Hancock and Sam Adams, for hidden weapons that could be used against them. Yes, there was smoke rising in Concord, but the British regulars were not burning down the village, just a liberty pole, a piece of wood, and a symbol of treason against the king. Check your facts before you act. Lives could have been saved. Here, here!
John Adams, would you like to rebut?
Yes, Mr. Moderator. Maybe you weren't burning down the village, but you burned down our liberty pole. That's a symbol of our freedom. It's as if you took our freedom from us.
Here, here!
Governor Hutchinson.
Moderator. People who break the law lose their rights to liberty. Here, here!
That concludes our topics of debate. We will now have summaries from each side. Patriots, John Adams.
Good citizens, you've heard two different points of view today, and now you're being asked to decide to continue to live by the king's unfair rules or fight for freedom. Listen while I review the facts, and you will realize that you should side with the Whigs and fight for independence. Salutary neglect was good for we colonists. It helped our economy. The king left us alone for many years. Why did he stop? We fought alongside British troops during the French and Indian War, hoping to be able to travel further west at the conclusion. But the proclamation of 1763 prohibits us from moving west of the Appalachian Mountains. What was the point of our fighting? The Boston Massacre was truly a massacre. 5 lives lost. How can we feel safe when British troops fire upon us? At the Boston Tea Party, fellow patriots dressed as Indians did board a ship in Dundee. However, they damaged nothing else and were only protesting an unfair tax. We believe there should be no taxation without representation. We have no say in how our money is spent. Is it used to benefit us? It could be spent on things we do not agree with. Quartering soldiers at our expense is harsh. We can barely afford to support our own families. Why should we support British troops as well? Lobsterbacks fired upon our militias at Lexington and Concord. They are supposed to be our protectors, not our enemies, and yet they fire upon us. An important decision awaits us. Shall we remain meek lambs, forced to follow unfair rules, or shall we demand our rights? It is time to separate from England. We may lose the king, but think of what we will gain. Liberty!
Here, here!
Loyalists, Captain Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Fellow colonists, you've heard many arguments today and now are being asked to make a choice. Listen while I summarize the excellent points made by my fellow loyalist debaters, and you will realize the choice is clear. We We must stay true to our king and our country. Salutary neglect, helpful neglect, has been around for a long time, and we've benefited from this. We should have known it would not be around forever. The proclamation of 1763 was made to keep us safe from hostile attacks made by Native Americans. Parliament and our king were only looking out for our welfare when asked to stay east of the Appalachian Mountains. What is now being called the Boston Massacre is certainly a tragedy. Any loss of life is, but it was certainly not a massacre. Those poor soldiers were only defending themselves from attack. And remember, John Adams, a patriot, defended those soldiers and they were found innocent. Why did he do this? I'll tell you why. Because he knew the soldiers acted in self-defense. Dumping the tea into the Boston harbor was a criminal act. When the Sons of Liberty did this, they broke the law, destroying private property. We must remain law-abiding citizens, or else we will all suffer. Parliament and our king have opposed a few taxes on items we purchase, but they have provided us with both economic support and military safety. This is a small price to pay for what we receive. Are we not all British subjects? Should we not all support our country? Representation would not be practical. It takes too long to get messages back and forth to England across the expansive ocean. And our king has always taken good care of us and will continue to if we let him. The quartering of soldiers is necessary. We need to have them in good shape so they may continue to do their job of protecting us. Unfortunately, shots were fired at Lexington and Concord. But do not blame the British regulars. They were only doing their job. When the peace was threatened, they must keep order. And knowing how well-trained and disciplined they are, I do not believe they would have fired first. Good people, let's remember we are all British subjects. As such, we enjoy the benefits of being part of the world's most powerful country. After listening to the points made today, the choice is clear. Remain loyal and we will continue to thrive and live in peace and protection and support of our beloved king. I know you'll make the right choice.
Here, here! That concludes our debate. Are there any questions? Ray?
I have family back in England. If I side with the Patriots, will I ever get to see my family again?
She says she has family back in England. If she sides with the Patriots, will she ever be able to see them again? John Hancock?
No, you will not be able to see your family again. But some things are worth fighting for. Liberty!
Here, here! Hannah Caldwell?
No, you will not get to see your family again. If you ever step foot in England, you will be labeled as a traitor and you will be hung for treason. So stay loyal and you can see your family whenever you want.
Here, here! Are there any other questions? Brody?
I am a Quaker and a pacifist. Is there no way to settle this peacefully?
He says he is a Quaker and a pacifist. Is there no way to settle this peacefully? Loyalists? Laura MacDonald?
Yes, there is a way to solve this peacefully. If you paid a small tax, you will continue to thrive under the great king's orders.
Here, here! Deborah Simpson?
No, we've tried our hardest. We've been generous and we did what we could. Some things are just worth fighting for. Liberty is worth fighting.
Here, here! Any other questions? Jordan?
Didn't understand
And that's okay, because next year you will study this, okay?
Awesome.
All right, and that's fine. But we're giving you a little introduction to next year.
I had a question about if you did go into the loophole, the loophole could fall on the building and catch the building on fire, and then it could catch the whole town on fire.
That's true. And they didn't have the fire department back then, put it out.
That would be so
Had a bucket brigade.
Hey,
Are there any other ones? It's your chance to put them on the spot. Okay.
Why are
If they
you
don't.
the judge? Because you helped the Patriots fight at one point. So you're not a neutral party.
I guess I was the only person that could do it.
yeah, I think so.
She was a good choice, and she has stayed very neutral through these performances, except at the end when she gets to vote. I don't think she favored one side over the other, do you?
Yes.
She voted for the loyalists yesterday.
But that was yesterday.
Oh, come
That's what she did.
Why are you gonna be like that, man?
My question is to the loyalists. So you mentioned that representation is not practical because of the distance between the colonies and England. But the colonists could basically vote for representation and send that basically representative over to you guys, and they could live in London and represent the colonies. Constant communication doesn't really need to happen. Can you explain why constant communication is mandatory for representation?
Because back then they did not have airplanes or boats, or well, they did have boats, but it would take them about a year to travel from the colonies to England and from England to the colonies. So by the time you got back to the colonies, they wouldn't really know if the problem still existed because it would have taken them about 2 years or so to fix the problem.
My question is for the man who represented the soldiers. Yes. Why did you represent them if you don't believe in what the king was doing?
I wanted my answer.
You get to answer it.
Okay. I believe that everyone deserves a fair trial, and the British troops were harassed by militias and only defending themselves.
Don't you guys feel any mercy for the king knowing that he did protect you?
Wow.
Oh, that's a hard group over there. And I played king for the last 2 months, so I'm taking a little offense to that.
How would you felt if your brother was in the British Army and then you found out your king killed your brother?
Oh, he's technically saying, how would you feel if you're someone left?
No, if when you left England and you found out that your brother was in the British Army and you found out that your king killed your brother, how would you feel?
Are you saying because the king ordered your brother as a soldier to fight and he
Yeah,
got
and they
killed?
found out
and-
that they're like someone else. I don't know.
So,
I know
All
what
right.
you're trying to say.
He joined the
He's my cousin.
Yes, but what I think he's saying is, if you had a brother or a cousin or somebody that was in the military, and then as colonists, you fired on them and your relative was killed, how would you feel towards your king for putting your brother in that situation? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Is that for me?
That's for anybody.
I would feel terrible.
Well, would you feel bad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, of course you would feel bad because you're related to that person, but they were on the other side going against you, so you don't know what to which just to do.
It's their fault for not coming to the colonies and staying in England. It's their fault.
I have a follow-up question to the loyalists about basically representation. So you guys state that the distance is too much to basically the colonies to be represented, but you don't think that the distance is too much that England can govern the colonies properly, where communication is important as well. Can you speak to that?
Well, the king has sent over people from England like Governor Hutchinson to rule over and report back to him, and he sends over British troops to
protect us. So there are people from England that listen to the king and who follow the king's orders that rule over the colonies.
Here, here.
I don't really understand how quarantine into a lake is breaking the law.
Say it again.
Say it louder.
She said that she doesn't understand why quarantine is so bullshit is against the law.
Oh, well, who wants to explain that? Yes, go ahead. We'll let the moderator.
It's breaking the law because that was private property, so they didn't really have the right to board the ship and dump the tea.
I have a question for the loyalists. You indicate that the taxes that are being asked to be paid by the colonists are just a small tax. What percentage of the income of an average colonist is the taxes that you're asking them to pay? How much of their income, I mean, we're talking, is this, the taxes that you're asking, is it 5%, 10%, 25%? How much of the colonists? Yeah.
Is
Actually,
a
it's-
large part of your income that you have to give to the king?
I would say maybe the colonists are paying they have about 30% of the taxes because in England we are paying 5 times more taxes than the colonists. So they're paying about 30% and England's paying about 70%.
Same question to the Patriots. Is that a fair assessment of how much they're asking you to pay?
Well, if they barely know how much they want us to pay, they might as well not even do it.
We're getting the.
Okay, all right, I guess we never really talked about the percentage that you're paying, but as king, okay, and I'll be abdicating my throne soon when the debate's over, but as king, what did I do to like the stamp tax? What did I do?
You not repealed it, but
Well, not in the classroom, but
Oh.
really, the real king.
you put
You said the word before, what did I do?
you repealed.
I repealed it, okay? And did I repeal everything else?
Yes.
What did I keep? The tea tax, was that a lot of money? Tiny. Why did I just keep that little bit of tax there? No.
Because you wanted to show that you can still tax them.
Still have the right to tax you. But I bent and I bent and I bent for you, right? As king, I did that. I repealed and repealed and repealed. But to prove my point, prove the king's point, we kept that small tax on tea. And why did you not like the fact that you had to pay that money? You paid more for smuggled tea. You smuggled it in, broke the law, and it cost you more than the English tea would have cost you. Why, Aiden?
Because we don't have representation.
Yeah, so you fought because you wanted representation, and it was the principle. It wasn't. You don't have a right to taxes if you don't have representation. So as far as percentage goes, I don't think we ever really talked about that, but made them think, didn't it? Okay.
Okay, we've done it to one king already. One king's dead.
Huh?
That King George
Oh.
right there.
That's an effigy.
Yeah, but you know what?
He's a doll.
Is he gonna know what an effigy is?
He's a very creepy
Who's
dog.
gonna explain what the effigy is? That's up to the moderator.
You're hanging.
You can do it yourself, or you can call somebody.
Well, an effigy is kind of like what the rebels did, and they, like, it was like kind of a puppet. Yeah, it was kind of like a puppet that they used hang.
So it's not a real person. Okay?
But what I was gonna say, I had this in my mind just in case that was the wrong question. We've done it to Osama bin Laden. Just assassinate him.
He's not even a real person.
Speak English.
Osama bin Laden?
Not yet.
Oh.
About the debate on this.
Well, I'm sorry,
Do you know that name? Is that anything you've heard before? No, the year is 1775, so we don't know what you're talking about. Okay? And you know what? They were told if anybody asked something that was out of 1775 later on, they're going to tell you they have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
Warning 1.
No, exactly. How is tea private property?
Because we have imported it all the way from England for the colonies, so it is still England's property because we paid for it and we imported it.
Here! East India Tea Company owned it. And, they were selling it to the colonies, so it did belong to them. So what the loyalists are saying is that they have the right to go on board and dump. That's like somebody going into your house and taking the toys and throwing them somewhere.
Not Fred the llama.
So you said that the loyalists or the English people that are like specifically in England are paying 5 times as much of the taxes, right? Riddle me this: if they're paying 5 times as much, 5 times the taxes, how come they're getting more money than the Patriots to pay those taxes? What's up the chair? Well, you know, if they're paying 5 times that amount, they're not getting.
Yeah, they're getting the same amount as money.
Whatever their occupation is will determine what they get. Now, as colonists, we paid a tiny little bit. If you were living over in England, you'd be paying 5 times that. It wouldn't matter what your job was. You'd still have to pay it. So, but you had representation. They don't. All right, let's take one more question, and then we're going to have to, because I know 5th grade has.
I don't know how it's fair that they get to pay like half, like they don't get, they pay more than that. Like,
No, they pay more than us.
Oh, okay. Why, how is it fair that they pay more than us?
Well, because we're in England and the people in England pay more than the people in the colonies because we live in the colonies and we've been taxed longer than the colonies have, and we are not, and the people in England are not rebelling against that, but the people in the colonies are, so they're paying less.
Here, here.
Actually, I think their point is, why should, England's paying more, so why should they complain? That's exactly what they're saying. They shouldn't complain. They're paying a lot less than people back in England.
Also because we still respect our king very much, and we would not ever dare rebel against him. And the king knows that he still has very much of a rule over us, and he's very humble, and he doesn't want to be a bad king, so he wants to stop all the rebels, so he repeals their taxes for them.
What did we learn about King George when we studied him? How does he feel about his people in the colonies? Oh, you wanted to answer the other question. Okay, we'll go back to mine in a minute.
They pay more because they get representation for all of it, and we pay less because we don't have representation for any of it. And we fought for years.
You want want to answer my question, you have to direct it to the moderator. What would you direct it to the moderator?
Razor?
What's your question? I asked, what did you learn about King George? How did he feel about his colonists? How did he feel towards them?
He felt like they were his children, and like he wanted to like be the best king of all, but he wasn't.
Spoken as a true patriot, but he wasn't. Okay.
He felt like we were his very misbehaved children.
Are you misbehaved children?
Yes.
They will say yes. I am. All right, at this point, we probably need to wrap it up and go to voting, because I know fourth grade you have special, right?
We don't have an
You
action
don't
today.
have one. Oh, all right, so, okay. All right, I am amazed every time we do this. Every time it's a little bit different. Your questions were great. They have a couple of stage questions, but everything else, they just have to think on their feet. And that's not always easy, but I think they did a great job. I think they showed a lot of knowledge about this period of time. So let's show them how much we enjoyed this. As an audience, I didn't end up with anybody else in jail. Yesterday we had like 6 people.
No,
so,
gonna guess.
Huh?
No, we had 6 people in the morning.
One in jail.
Yeah.
So as an audience, I thank you for being respectful, and we would like to thank you for that. Now voting. My bailiffs will come around with a token. All right, not yet, not yet. Now, not yet. What I ask the audience, if somebody's in jail, they lose their right to vote, and that's, you know, when you go to jail, you lose those privileges that we're given as, you know, citizens of the United States. But we did have somebody, a jailbird over there, and what I do is I ask the audience, how do you feel about letting him vote? Okay, we ask this every year. Sometimes the audience thinks, okay, give him a break, let him vote. Other times, no. So I'm going to ask you, do you think that our incarcerated fellow, who is over here now, but who's over there, should be allowed to vote today?
No.
Okay, guess what? No.
Making too much noise.
All right. We have a bunch of law-abiding people in this school. They didn't get to vote yesterday either. All right, now, our tokens look like this, and you're each going to be given one. After you vote, don't start yet, because they'll look at their tokens and they won't listen to me. They will come around afterwards with these cans, and all you do is simply put your token in, the one you think made the best votes. Now, before we do that, let me remind you, we are voting for which side you think was more convincing today. The Patriots think that you should fight for independence. Go against your country, fight for independence. The Loyalists, their points were, all of these things happened that shouldn't have happened, and what we really need to do is stay loyal and true to our king and our country. We don't want to go to war. Okay? So again, let me remind you, don't vote for the Patriots because he's a great football team. Right? Don't vote for the Loyalists because, you know, Governor Hutchins looks so cool over here in his wig. Okay? So that's how your vote is going to be determined. Really think about the points they make. My moderator is going to tally up the vote here, and then we'll announce in a minute. one thing that we need to understand, at this period of time, many colonists are still very undecided, and some of you might have even been, which way do I go today? So even though it seems kind of, like this, the majority of colonists back in 1775, they hadn't made up their mind. You had these guys over here who clearly would have been considered committing treason today for the things they're doing against their country, and yet we're very glad that they started all of this so that we could become our country, but that's what happens when we have a war. So if you are a little, like, I'm not really sure which way to go, that's exactly how the colonists felt back in this period of time. Okay, they know that if they go over this side, they are going against their country, which is England. Okay, and if they stay with the loyalists over here, they could be very torn. Well, I really would like to have representation, so it's a hard decision to make. Now, I happen to know in the past, and I heard that it happened today too, even some parents are not voting for the side that their child is on. So in any conflict like this, you're going to have, when you get to studying the Civil War, it's going to be the same thing. You could have a brother fighting a brother. That can happen when people end up going to war over certain issues and they are on different sides of the fence. It's the way it is. But I think that what we take away from this is that there is always another side, and we really need to take the time to listen to that side so we can make a very informed decision. Yesterday, the Loyalists won the first performance. In the afternoon, the Patriots won by 1 vote. Well, and then I said I'd vote and tied it up, but I don't usually vote.
No, we haven't won.
No, it was
So-
with every single year. It was a tie.
I think what you need to understand is the Loyalists don't win very often because we usually want to just go with the Patriots because we love being, U.S. citizens. So for the Loyalists to win yesterday and then come within 1 vote shows that they both really knew their stuff and were able to convince an audience one way or the other. So I'm very proud of what they've done this year, and they should be proud of themselves too. Whether they win or not, they did a great job. So you have a winner? Okay.
The winner is Patriots.
My class would like to leave you with one last